Hey guys, my name is Ermelinda, and I am presenting my survey of literature presentation. And in the following presentation, I will be presenting children and youth services studies as well as a Taylor and Francis study done by Hieronymus Colitis, and then a journal of clinical psychology that is by David M. Lawson from Stephen F. Austin State University. My experience versus the source's experience. So with my experience, I experienced a lot of anxiety, which included nail biting, hair pulling, anxiety attacks, and as well as depression and mental difficulties processing different thoughts, different ideas growing up, just from all the things that I had encountered growing up as a child with traumatic events and psychological treatments at home between parents. And so, as I was reading my sources, I encountered that all of these emotions are a result of trauma, and every trauma has they have different results in the end, but most particularly, every trauma is proven to result in some type of PTSD, which could either be depression, anxiety, addiction. But like I said before, all these feelings could result differently if the trauma is different. But that being said, every person's trauma result will be different in every single way. No one is similar. No one is going to feel exactly the same way as somebody else that they have met or encountered with during a 5-second meet and greet. On a study done by Dirk Shabatz, he did some clinical studies as well that presented back in 2008, and he went back and looked at them and realized and proved that despite the investment in mental health, the numbers have not changed at all. So 28% of these experiences are still very, very common in today's time. As for the trauma that can result in lifelong difficulties regulated to self-regulation, that also includes the trauma of loss or grief that can occur in extreme stress. A lot of those feelings aren't always anxiety. It can also include hyperventilating and feeling like you're in a state where you are absolutely nothing in this world, which the more you don't fight with, the more you avoid facing, puts you in a state of depression, which is another very common result of trauma that most people don't acknowledge because it doesn't come right off the bat. It can take years, it could take 6 months to kick in, and then especially if it's taken a very long time to kick in, once you hit depression, you are in a hole that you cannot get out of. And most people don't understand this, but if you yourself have experienced a depression state, you will understand that hole is very, very dark. But some people can get out of it, some can't. It just depends. Do you want to help yourself? Do you want to stay in that little hole that is so terrifying to yourself? The 10% of children who develop PTSD after non-interpersonal trauma, those proportions rose to 25% after interpersonal trauma like war, terrorism, or a violence injury because of a violence event. or abuse, because this number rose, they think that Dr. Dirk Schubatz believes that the interpersonal trauma will last longer because they have faced another trauma while dealing with the previous trauma, which not only affects the child basically 2 times worse, but it really narrows down how a child or an adolescent thinks about the world, especially after seeing trauma 1 hit and then trauma 2 hit. At that point, a child's thoughts are, is this going to get better? Is this really the world that I live in? When they are seeing heartache after heartache experiences in their lives. Once again, I bring up Dr. David Lawson and his research on complex trauma. So therefore, we talk about the way that trauma isn't just anxiety, just like addictions. It's more of hypervigilance and really just falling into a state of depression that leads after a trauma. As I was reading this article, I found different ways of treating complex trauma that I didn't know about, like parent and child relationship matters in teaching and I guess you could say in helping the child move forward with their lives after trauma, because a child doesn't want to feel insecure, doesn't want to feel lost. It wants to feel by a parent loved, protected, and simply safe, and know that for a whole second, despite of what their heart and what their feelings are saying, they are okay because of the people who surround them. And Dr. Lawson states that in his evidence-based practice in clinical settings on page 2. Throughout reading these 5 articles that I have encountered while doing this presentation, but that I only intentionally highlighted 3 because those were the main ones that provided information and specific detail of how complex trauma can be treated and how little things affect someone who is trying to be treated by depression or the results of trauma. I definitely learned many things doing this, such as there's different ways to deal with trauma. It's not just going to get help from a psychologist. Everything around you matters in that moment when you're trying to get help. You don't want to encounter a stressor while you're having a bad day and just let yourself fall into depression for the rest of the day because of that one thing. Also, it's more than just depression, anxiety, things like doubting yourself, being very self-conscious, having a terrible attitude towards life. It's not especially being in denial after a trauma. That to me, I have learned that it is the key. Someone that stays in denial is definitely not anywhere near wanting to get help, trying to get help. Someone that is in denial is really in a very dark hole that themselves are the only people that can help themselves get out of that. Also, there are people work on trying to prove that PTSD is not just for veterans, not just for police officers, firefighters. A life event can cause PTSD. And I myself, for the past 9 years, currently going on 10, to this day, I encounter myself with PTSD. Little things like running into the same color car that I watched my brother get killed with. That to me is crucial. If I see a car, the rest of the day is ruined. And 9 years later, after going to get psychological help, I I still struggle, and it's not okay to say, you'll get over this in the next 3 months. Everyone has a time period. Everyone has their way of grieving. Everyone has their way of accepting what has just happened, and not everyone is the same. It has this assignment has definitely helped me understand a little bit more about my PTSD and how to deal with it. So for that, I am very thankful. As I will conclude, this is my presentation. Thank you guys for listening, and I am excited to listen to everybody else's. Thank you.